They can be fed crickets, small roaches. I've even seen one take on a Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. It's Collin, and in today's video we're going to be talking about one of the most unique and probably one of the smallest pet reptiles out there. Today's video is all about viper geckos. These guys have a ton of personality, and whether you have one or you're considering getting one, today's video is going to be delving into all the aspects of their care. So let's get started. Viper geckos are native to deserts in Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. So these guys are a desert-dwelling species of gecko. On average for adults, they get about 3 to 4 inches in total length. And I have one of our adult males here, so you can see he's probably right about 3 inches long. So first, when we talk about viper geckos, we want to talk about their lifespan. So although these guys are really small, you would think they'd be pretty short-lived. But in fact, these guys can live a very long time in captivity. So with good care in captivity, the lifespan of these guys is about 10 to 15 years. So they can be a very long-term commitment. The next thing we want to talk about when we talk about these little creatures is habitat. So these guys are found in very dry, arid regions in the desert in little microclimates. So we want to go ahead and do our best to replicate that as best as we can in captivity. Minimum enclosure size for a viper gecko. Here at the Tye-Dyed Iguana, we usually recommend a terrarium that's a minimum of a 10-gallon, but of course, larger space with adequate hides and other climbing surfaces is preferred. So if you kept these guys in a 20 long or maybe like an 18 by 18 by 12 exoterra, that would be an excellent habitat for these guys, especially since they like to hide and they can fit in all kinds of very small nooks and crannies and things like that. As far as substrate for these guys, of course, being a more arid species, we're going to recommend a drier material. So there's varying thoughts on this. We here at the Tye-Dyed Iguana keep them on Desert Blend, which is a crushed walnut substrate. It's a little bit safer than sand, has a little bit more of a coarser grip. Some folks like to keep these guys in a more naturalistic terrarium, and to do that, you could also use products like Exoterra Stone Desert or Zoo Med Excavator Clay. Those products would be very great in creating an arid substrate for these guys. Of course, if you want to have live plants or succulents, you'd have to do some amending to the soil mix. But in general, for the most utilitarian substrate, we recommend using crushed walnut. Very easy to clean and hygienic as far as them, and it also has a pretty naturalistic texture and appearance. As far as setting up your enclosure for these guys, you're generally going to want to have a minimum of at least 2 to 3 hides. We like to keep one on the warm side of the enclosure and then one on the cool side. And we here at the Tye-Dyed Iguana, we also like to provide a humid hide, very similar to a leopard gecko. So we'll put a hide that's completely enclosed and we'll fill that with some damp sphagnum moss. The reason for that is, just like the leopard gecko, it assists these little guys with shedding. And in fact, you'll find in captivity, these guys actually like to hang out in there pretty frequently as well. As far as temperatures are concerned for your viper gecko, we like to provide a basking spot that's usually anywhere from 90 to 95 degrees in the warm side, very similar to a leopard gecko, and then the cool side can be in the 70s. In the evenings, you can have the temperature drop a good 10 to 15 degrees, so as long as the house is above 70 degrees at night, these guys are going to be absolutely fine having that temperature drop once the lights go off in the evening. And like most of our reptiles here as well, we'll recommend a 12-hour photo period. So that means the daytime lights are on for 12 hours and then off for 12 hours. The heating can be achieved through several different methods. Just like most of your desert reptiles, you can use an incandescent tight beam basking bulb, you can use an infrared heat projector. It's just a matter of personal taste or what works best for your enclosure situation. As far as UVB lighting, if you are going to provide these guys with UVB, I would go ahead and recommend using either an Exoterra supplemental bulb, or you could also use a T5 5.0 bulb by Zoo Med. That would work absolutely fine for these guys. Again, these guys don't need a ton of UVB, so just having that 5.0 is going to be great for them. All right, so as far as your other parameters for your enclosure are going to go, as far as ambient humidity for these guys, we talked about temperature, but as far as humidity, you're going to want to shoot for an ambient humidity of about 30 to 50%. For most people, that ends up being pretty similar to what their room temperature humidity is in the house. Having said that, your substrate is usually going to suck out a significant amount of moisture out of the air. And then as well, we do recommend having good ventilation. So for most people, that means having a screen top of some kind. Now, these guys, although they are a drier, more arid species, like I said earlier, they do appreciate that extra humidity. The way we provide that, though, is with that what we call a little microclimate, and that's in the form of a humid hide. So having your humid hide in the enclosure where they can get extra humidity as required for shedding or for their needs is going to be absolutely critical for these guys. It'll also help with shedding issues and things like that. As far as diet is concerned for the viper gecko, these guys are insectivores, so they're going to eat a variety of small insects. They can be fed crickets, small roaches. I'm even seen one take on a very, very tiny hornworm. Pretty awesome sight, kind of like a mini dinosaur. But again, so small insects are going to be the staple diet. Mainly small to medium-sized crickets and small dubia roaches, I would say, would be the staple. As far as supplements for these guys go, we're going to recommend using a high-quality calcium with every feeding, and then a multivitamin once a week. As far as daily care is concerned for these guys, you'll always want to make sure they have a bowl of fresh water available at all times. Having said that, these guys aren't the biggest, so make sure your water bowl is not overly deep or things like that. They cannot swim, so you want to make sure they can crawl in and out of it as needed. Make sure you're using fresh dechlorinated water at all times whenever you fill up their water bowl. As far as feeding goes, we feed ours every single day. For babies, you might feed them more often. You may even feed them, twice a day, depending on how old they are. Of course, your prey item size is going to vary on the size of your viper gecko. So as far as determining the right prey item size for your gecko, you generally want to recommend something that can fit between the space for their eyeballs. So this space right here, that's a good indication. So for this guy, we would be using anywhere from 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch crickets, but the size can vary depending on if you have a very tiny baby or things like that. As far as other maintenance goes for your viper gecko, you're gonna wanna make sure you spot clean as needed. So any feces that's left in the enclosure, uneaten insect parts, things like that, make sure you clean that out periodically throughout the week. And then as far as lighting is concerned, another recommendation I always like to recommend is using a timer. That way you remember to turn the lights on and off at the correct interval. And then as far as feeding goes, like I said, these guys for an adult, we feed them every single day. And then as far as general other tips and tricks as far as like demeanor and handling, these guys are a little smaller. So one thing I like to tell people is that although they can be really laid back, when they're young and they're babies, they can be very skittish. So when you do hold them, I always recommend holding them inside an enclosure or something, because they, believe it or not, they can be pretty darn fast. But when they're motivated, they can be very skittish. So just remember, nice, gentle handling. They are very small geckos in nature, so you want to be nice and gentle with them and things like that. If you have any questions about viper geckos or are interested in more information, be sure to stop in store or send us a message online. Thanks for watching and have an awesome day.